All right, so it is that time of year again with political ads filling up your mailboxes and your airwaves. But one in particular has filled airtime both during and between our newscasts for months. So this is where we're going to bring in Andrew Baertlein, because Andrew, you looked into this, and this ad targets 3 Canon County senators and legislators with blanket claims. All 3 are senators, as a matter of fact. Excuse me.
Yep.
But with blanket claims that they're anti-police, right? And totally fine with a wide open southern border.
Yeah, kind of connecting those pieces together. If you don't support police, clearly you're happy with an open border. That's not really the case. Now, the names to our viewers should be common if you followed this legislative session. Senator Brian Lenny of Nampa, Senator Chris Trakel of Caldwell, and Senator Tammy Nichols of Middleton. The ad slams them for their no votes on 2 bills from the 2023 legislative session. And like any political ad, it dismisses some nuance. We'll fill in those gaps for you.
Brian Lenny, Tammy Nichols, and Chris Trakel. Their records are appalling. In the state legislature, they voted against supporting Idaho law enforcement.
They get to the claim quickly and were kind enough to cite their sources. It takes issue with the trio's no votes on House Bill 222 and House Bill 351, seemingly bills for police. But starting with House Bill 222,
counseling services, a shuttle service, vigil and physical security. That's what this funding is for.
The bill's sponsor shows this isn't about police at all. It's actually about college kids.
That we support the University of Idaho.
And funding additional support services after the 2022 Moscow stabbings.
Because they've still kept that counseling in place. They've still provided some additional security.
And while none of the targeted trio spoke in the floor debate, political ally Senator Scott Herndon calls it an inflated cost.
The arguable actual security costs were far less than $1 million, and that's the reason for my nay vote today.
But yet, they still make the claim twice.
That's right. Lenny, Nichols, and Trakel voted against supporting our law enforcement.
The latter half comes from House Bill 351, which is closer to home.
Good Senators, this is a fiscal year 2024 original appropriation bill for the Department of Corrections.
The budget increase accounts for inflation, new food services, new clothes, and higher wages. None of the senators explained their no votes, but it's far from the following allegations.
While we face an open border crisis, cartels flood the border with fentanyl, and our communities face the threat of rising crime, Lenny, Nichols, and Trakel voted against supporting law enforcement? They aren't conservatives. It's time.
All 3 senators have called for closing the southern border for years.
Words have meaning, and we need to make sure that our words are clear.
And they often vote against memorials for not going far enough to call on federal action.
And all this will do is incentivize further waves of migrants at the border, when instead Congress should be focused on reducing the flow of illegal entry of persons and fentanyl. Like I said, it gets the problem right, it gets the solution wrong.
And so for that reason, I cannot support this memorial at this time.
There are pieces up to interpretation. If they voted against that IDOC budget because they wanted to cut IDOC officers' pay, then that claim could be true if you interpret it that way. But again, we don't exactly know why the individual senators voted the way on that second budget there. The motive of a no vote is often missed in election ads, which makes you think, who's making these? The ad clearly labels Idaho Liberty PAC paid for the messaging, and the Liberty PAC is relatively new to the state on paper. It's just 2 years old. But in that time, it's grown to nearly $600,000. More than half of that money comes from the Idaho Victory Fund. They're a large donor who's given to established Republicans, including Secretary of State Phil McGrain, Senate Pro Tem Chuck Winder, and Lieutenant Governor Scott Bedke. Interestingly enough, the Victory Fund also donated to Jeff Agenbrod, who Lenny unseated in 2022. But the election ad is disingenuous. It's maybe even fair to say the donors don't care about those 2 votes they used to slam Lenny, Nichols, and Trakel at all. Because at the exact same time, the Victory Fund donated to both Representative Ron Mendive and Representative Vito Barbieri. Barbieri was the only red light in the House on 351.
This question is, shall House Bill 222 pass the House?
And both turned down 222. And yet, not a peep from the PAC. And just like we talked about yesterday with the Make Liberty Win PAC spreading some half-baked political shots at candidates, this is in the same vein. It's common to see this ahead of elections, contentious primary elections coming up. If we want to touch on Lenny and Eggenbrod, they have that rematch coming up. A lot of money going into that election. These are things that'll happen.
Yeah, these are things that happen. Now, we get this question all the time about, okay, we don't decide what ads get put on the air. This is how this works. We get this accused, you guys are doing this. And to say this disingenuous is not the same as our sales team going, well, okay, we'll take this ad, it's not offensive, we'll put it on the air. And it opens up the doors of equal opportunity for other candidates. Now, this is a candidate, or that's not a candidate issue, it's an issue, if I can phrase it that way.
That's how they separate out those different ads, candidate ad and issue ad.
But because they use a likeness of those senators, then it becomes a candidate thing. And so there's equal opportunity for somebody to come up and go, that's not correct. Just because it's disingenuous does not make it something that we are putting out that's technically, I don't know, offensive or slanderous.
And you can interpret things any way you want. So in that U of I funding for the services after the stabbings, part of that has to do with security on campus. Could you say that that's part of the law enforcement aspect? You can interpret it however you want.
You did reach out to Senator Lenny about this, or a couple of them, I assume.
Just Lenny.
Just Lenny.
And he was not interested in talking with us. He's the only number I actually had.
Okay. So he had his opportunity, but again, they're equal opportunity. There's something wrong with an ad you don't believe in, you have fair game to run one of their own. Is kind of how this thing plays out. Thank you very much, Andrew.